At the end of the 19th century, fisherman Olaf Jansen and his father went out in their small boat to look for fish to catch. During their voyage north, they fell into a hole around the North Pole and found themselves in an unseen world that was inhabited by a highly advanced civilization. Its inhabitants communicated telepathically, were at least 2 times taller than humans, and moved at tremendous speeds on discoid aircraft. There was also a sun located in the center of this Earth. 2 years later, father and son came out of this world through a hole all the way to Antarctica, at the South Pole. However, Olaf's father unfortunately died when they were leaving. The son instead survived and somehow made it back to Europe. Olaf Jansen then told everyone about the unknown world, and this led to his imprisonment in a mental hospital for 24 years. At that point, after everything that had happened to him, he was probably thinking, why didn't I stay where I was? Or did he? When he got out, he moved to the USA, California, and there he met Willis George Emerson. Olaf told him in detail about his adventure, backing up his account with diaries and maps of the route. This brings us to 1908, when Emerson's book entitled The Smoky God was published, in which he recounted Jansen's mysterious adventure. Until his death, the fisherman convinced those around him of the veracity of what had happened to him and his father. On November 23, 1968, the American spacecraft ESA-7 took several pictures of the North Pole under absolutely clear skies. These pictures clearly showed a huge black hole in the region of the pole. But was Olaf Jansen telling the truth? The stories, myths, and secret missions associated with the Hollow Earth are countless. Naturally, there is also a lot of speculation on the subject. After a few sleepless days and nights, in which we immersed ourselves in the study of hundreds of materials on the subject, we have collected and synthesized the most important, interesting, and, as far as can be said, credible moments related to the Hollow Earth in just a few minutes. For centuries, the Hollow Earth theory has stirred the imagination and passions of mankind. Over the years, it has been scorned, considered fantasy, and a subject of ridicule, yet it continues to attract attention and find more and more new followers. This fascinating concept is also present in almost all religions and cultures that offer us the notion of a hidden world beneath the Earth's crust. Mythological heroes such as Orpheus and Odysseus have sought truths and loved ones in the depths of the Earth. The Christian hell and the Chinese afterworld are also located beneath the surface. Tibetan mystics, on the other hand, reveal legends of Shamballa and Agartha, home to beings with incredible psychic abilities. Let's take just a second to reflect on the above. Have you considered how many ancient myths, legends, and religions speak of an underworld? And where on earth did people of a time who neither mined oil nor coal or any minerals ever think to attach such importance and significance to the underground, sometimes even called the realm? If you have an answer to this, we are sure everyone will find it interesting to read it in the comments. Now we go ahead and deliberately omit the hundreds of works in literature, such as novels, science fiction stories, etc. It turns out that every era brings its own narratives of the vast world beneath us. The theory of the Hollow Earth continues to be one of the most captivating mysteries that generations of seekers and dreamers never stop to unravel. Of course, these days we're also going to get to one of the largest covert operations ever conducted by the United States, which has to do precisely with the search for that Hollow Earth entrance. But before that, it's good to know why it's getting there. Plato is known as the pioneer who first laid the groundwork for the Hollow Earth theory, sparking the imagination of many after him. Subsequently, the excitement surrounding this idea was intensified by the brilliant mind of Leonhard Euler, a prominent member of the St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences and a mathematician who gave new dimensions to the concept. He presents our planet as a hollow sphere hiding another sun at its core, a source of light and life for the supposed continents within. He described the existence of a shell distant from the core that has outlets at the North and South poles. Back in 1692, the great astronomer Edmund Halley, whose name is associated with the discovery of the famous Halley's Comet, championed the hollow Earth theory. He proposed the bold hypothesis that our planet is not massive, but consists of two concentric spheres approximately 800 kilometers thick, separated from each other by their own atmospheres and possessing individual magnetic poles. At the center of this enigmatic structure, according to Halley, is a core whose dimensions resemble those of Venus, Mars, and Mercury, and which rotates at its own different speed. According to his hypothesis, the auroras are actually the result of the outflow of this hidden inner atmosphere. The American engineer Cleve Symes states,
"The Earth is hollow and habitable from within."
On April 15, 1818, he petitioned the U.S. Congress to fund an expedition to search for a passage into the interior of the Earth. Members of Congress received the following letter.
To the whole world, I declare that the Earth is hollow and habitable from within. It is composed of several solid concentric spheres placed one within the other, and has openings at the poles. I need 100 brave, like-minded men to set out from Siberia in late summer with reindeer and sleds. I promise that we shall find warm and rich lands, abounding in minerals and animals, and perhaps people too. I undertake to prove the truth of this statement, and am ready to explore the interior of the Earth if the institutions will help me. Cleve Symes, former Marine captain.
Do you think they gave him the money? Correct. Of course not. Now, to be honest here, we can only speculate how sincere Symes was in his convictions, and whether financial gain led him to speak a little louder than was necessary. But the fact is that his efforts did have some effect. Well, at least in a personal sense, because then he became wildly popular and gained a large following. 100 years or so later, the subject kicks off again, but this time to heights never seen before. The Nazi theorist of the doctrine of eternal ice, the engineer Hans Horbiger, also thought that the Earth was hollow and that we would need this to shelter us there when the moon fell on our planet. This idea was taken very seriously by the Führer, prompting the well-known numerous expeditions to Antarctica. The Germans began establishing a base on the icy continent in 1938. A research ship was sent to the Antarctic coast. Its seaplane photographed almost 1/4 of the continent and dropped metal pennants with swastikas on the ice. Germany claimed ownership of a vast territory in the Queen Maud Land region called New Swabia. Then, Admiral Karl Dönitz's Seawolf submarines headed for Antarctica. After the end of World War II, documents were found indicating that submariners had discovered a giant system of interconnected intercontinental cavities in this area, forming vast expanses of warm air. In extracts from Dönitz's statements on the expeditions we read,
"My submariners have discovered a veritable terrestrial paradise."
And in 1943, he uttered another phrase that remains a mystery to this day.
"The German U-boat fleet is proud to have created for the Führer an impregnable fortress at the other end of the world."
You will guess for yourself what that last one might have meant in a moment. Once every 3 months, the research ship Schwabenland made trips to Antarctica. For several years, mining equipment and other machinery is transported there. Railroad tracks, trolleys, and huge cutters for tunneling. A secret base codenamed Base 211 was also constructed, for supplies to which 35 of the largest German submarines were used, from which they removed the armament and adapted them from combat to cargo. The submarines were also used to transport thousands of concentration camp laborers, prominent scientists and their families, and others. On April 30, 1945, in the last days of World War II, the Führer's bunker in Berlin was surrounded by enemies. Supposedly inside were Hitler and his wife Eva Braun, to whom he had been married only the day before. Stranded, the two decide they will not be taken alive and take cyanide. Hitler also fatally shoots himself in the head. Their bodies were then burned by German soldiers, as Adolf had ordered during his lifetime. This is the basic and generally accepted story. Actually, yes, some remains have been found, but never proven to be Hitler's or Braun's. A secret burial followed. Then, in 1970, an exhumation, and again nothing, with the Russian authorities eventually stating that the remains were cremated and scattered to avoid the possibility of the resting place becoming a shrine to those supporting the Führer's beliefs. Hitler and his death remains one of the most mysterious chapters in 20th century history. But the story does not end there. In 1946, the U.S. Navy, under the command of Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, conducted Operation High Jump. The admiral headed to Antarctica on the aircraft carrier Casablanca and was accompanied by 25 aircraft, 7 helicopters on board, a submarine, an icebreaker, and 12 tankers carrying 4,800 men. The expedition arrived in Antarctica on 1st of February 1947 and was scheduled to operate there for the next 8 months. On the 30th day, however, everything was abruptly terminated. The expedition was recalled urgently to return to America, and the documents relating to it were classified. The only report on the case is on March 5, 1947, in the Chilean news bulletin El Mercurio, and it reads,
Admiral Byrd declared today that it was imperative for the United States to take immediate defensive measures against hostile regions.
Richard Evelyn Byrd is known to a wide range of people as a polar pilot, explorer, and traveler. His fame came after November 28, 1929, when he flew over the South Pole. By this time, he had already had the previous experience of 2 record-breaking flights, over the North Pole in 1926 and across the Atlantic from New York to the Normandy coast in 1927. Byrd then made 4 more Antarctic expeditions. On June 11, 1957, Admiral Richard Byrd died at his home in Boston. But he leaves us a legacy that illuminates the events of that day of panic and sudden evacuation. Admiral Byrd had a personal diary. After his death, the notes he wrote became public. The Admiral's notes on the subject begin thus: I'm writing this journal in secret and don't fully understand everything that's going on. There comes a time when the inevitability of truth overshadows rationality. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation at the time of writing. It will never be released to the general public, but it is my duty to write it all down so that it can one day be read. The following lines will provide you with a summary mentioning the essentials. Admiral Byrd. The resistance we encountered was not only from combat aircraft of incredible capability. We were attacked by strange flying saucers, which inflicted great damage. They took off vertically from the water at tremendous speed, flying around the masts so fast that the ship's antennas were distorted by the impact of the sound wave. A couple of corsairs managed to get away, and in a flash, 2 of them were shot down by some sort of beam coming out of the front of the flying saucers. Then they flew into the water near the ships. I was on the deck of the Casablanca and understood nothing. These objects flew without making any sound, floated silently between the ships, and vomited murderous fire. Suddenly the destroyer Murdoch, which was about 40 yards away, burst into a bright fire and began to sink. Despite the danger, rescuers from the other ships came at once. The nightmare lasted about 20 minutes. When the flying saucers were back in the water, we began to survey our losses. They were terrifying. Who put an end to Operation High Jump? Aliens, beings from the interior of the Earth, or perhaps the Germans? In 1935, the Ahnenerbe organization was founded, the most mysterious organization in the Third Reich. Even now, the secret services of the leading powers seek their secrets. But why? Very simply, it is the only organization in history that has dealt with the occult and mysticism funded by guess who? That's right, by the Third Reich. No organization has had such information available and power to develop advanced technology as Ahnenerbe. The founders of Ahnenerbe were not, of course, random people, but from the Third Reich establishment. The study of magic and paranormal phenomena was entirely under the instruction of Adolf Hitler. According to ancient texts, the Hindu Vedas hold detailed descriptions of flying machines called vimanas. They are represented as flying craft operated by the gods. Documentation on the vimanas offers details of their size, speed, and range of travel, as well as the fuel sources used to power them. Is it possible that Hitler created for himself and his cronies a hidden oasis somewhere in the bowels of the earth? Or perhaps his efforts bore fruit and he discovered an entrance to an unknown world in the bowels of the earth? Could it be that the Ahnenerbe have had no success with finding the records of the Wimani device after all, and that Admiral Byrd was not exactly battling recreated Wimani? These questions, and many more like them, sadly remain relevant today more than 50 years later. We would be interested to know what your opinion is on them.